Hi, this is Dr. Carl Goldkamp. A few things I have to say. One is we personally are involved both as a lifestyle, the ketogenic diet, but also through my 16 years of clinical practice of what is effective. What do people need to take sometimes, all the time, to support their ketogenic diet? You'll get bits and pieces of this ongoing week after week. It's important to be comprehensive. In one way it's simple, and one way it's a little bit complicated.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back for another episode of the Keto Naturopath. This is Dr. Carl Goldkamp, and today we're going to do an interview like we've done some before, but this is a special interview because it's a friend that I knew before she had anything to do with keto. She's a very busy woman. I knew her professionally through her work, and her name is Irma de Hoyos. And why I think Irma is an interesting person to talk to is she's put a lot of work into this awareness. When I first started talking to her, not everybody gets the importance of why they need to make a change. Not everybody has to be on keto, but moving in that direction is hugely beneficial to, I'd say, 99% of the population of the world. So with that, I'm going to plug away, ask Irma some basic questions on her perspective, what's changed in her life, and what she thinks, and what some of the difficulties were. So Irma, welcome. Thanks for making the time.
Thank you. I'm more than happy to. If it makes one person non-diabetic, then I did my job.
Absolutely. So a couple of questions I'm going to ask. Remember when we got started, and so Irma and a number of other people went through a coaching program we have, but the most difficult thing on the table at the beginning is to show that there's a need for even thinking about keto. So with you, Irma, remember how we were starting? I'm thinking, and I saw your blood numbers, your blood glucose. I'm saying, this is kind of high. We really have some serious issues on the table. How did that come across to you when we were first starting? Because you're a busy person. You really didn't want to spend a lot of time into getting this down. You wanted to, right? Am I correct?
That's correct. Yes. I sell on Amazon, and so that's, a lot of work, more and more work every time as Amazon gets stricter. But my point is that I perhaps didn't put the attention. No, I know that I didn't put the attention on my health. So I had gone to the doctor 2-3 years ago, and they became alarmed because I was, pre-diabetic at that moment. And I actually I just re-looked at my health records, and the doctor noted, she says she's going to take care of it. She doesn't seem concerned, and she's going to take care of it through Facebook. Which I thought was funny that I said that to the doctor. But in some ways, it's kind of true in that through Facebook and through being a seller, I was able to make contact with Dr. Carl. So my point is I didn't take it seriously. I really didn't take it seriously. I know that I had bouts of, like, when I would go to birthday parties and I would get the sugar overload of cake and cookies and diet, well, not even diet sodas. Did I do diet sodas? Maybe not. But I would feel uneasy, but I didn't pay attention to that. Even though there is, a history of diabetes in my family, but it's just like in many ways, it's a silent killer because you can't see it. And yes, and so anyway, what Dr. Carl knows more about that. But my point is, I didn't see it as serious. I didn't see it as serious until I saw that it is serious, and it can take away your limbs, and it can take away your sight. So and I finally found a keto diet that is very easy, and you're not hungry. And that's the number one thing. Is you're not hungry, and it's easy, 0 carbs. That's how much I've simplified it. It's 0 carbs, and you're not hungry. And so that's worked for me. And yes, my numbers have come down as far as glucose and my A1C. And so my awareness has really increased. My son also, of course, seeing the movie Magic Pill is just shocking that kids are growing up eating ramen noodles that are so bad for them and so forth. So, it's an awareness that's there now that wasn't there before.
Absolutely. Well, as I recall, I remember getting started, and because busy people want things to be efficient, give me the hard facts and let's get going, and I want this done by the end of the week. And it obviously doesn't work that way. So as I remember when we first got started with you in the group, is that I was asking to see your hemoglobin 1C. I was seeing your regular blood glucose because we're all starting to do finger pricks and then getting into finger pricks for ketones. And I thought, wow, and I think I won't say I had to confront you, but I had to sort of be a little harder by saying, if you were my patient, this is what I would be demanding from you. Were you surprised that you couldn't just flick this off your plate and say, hey, I'll get to it when I get to it? That, was there that thought too? Hey, it's just too busy. I don't want to deal with something. But you turned a corner and you said, let's deal with this. I'm going to focus. I'm going to get this down. My hemoglobin, my blood glucose is going to come down. But
yeah, I think that what's key is feedback. Like more, like you said, we want results, but in order to get those results, you got, in my own little house, I've got to get feedback. And so I said, I think having the tools of the ketone meter and, pricking yourself is key. And of course, logging your food and learning how many carbs a single tortilla has, and that only I can open my eyes like that. No matter if whatever anyone else says, it's just self-awareness. It's like you have to be surprised yourself to realize how pervasive the problem is. So I think that you've got to track your food as you coached us very well. You've got to track your food and don't think it's forever. You've just got to learn how to track and know that what goes in is going to show up in numbers. It's going to show up. There's no hiding in this, in this body of ours. If I put in X, I'm going to have Y results, and it's not that hard. Pricking yourself, you just have to get used to it and so forth, and tracking the food. The technology is there to make it so easy. And so I think that having those immediate daily feedback, personal feedback, where I could hide it, which I remember I was with my sister and we were just starting, and I actually did have an almond croissant, and I actually did have pancakes, which I thought I was always okay having one pancake with sugar-free syrup. Sugar-free doesn't mean carbless. It has carbs. It doesn't have sugar, but it has carbs. And so those are like aha moments. I guess that's what I'm talking about, is having aha moments where there's no turning back. Once you know, and you're only cheating yourself to think that sugar-free means zero carbs. It doesn't mean. Those are two different things. And so,
I'm glad you got that message. So I almost felt, because we had this collective a logging app that I could sort of see what you're eating on a daily basis, provided you log that. Didn't you find in the beginning that I just simply gave you work? I didn't necessarily say, hey, I'm going to change your whole life. I might have said that intermittent, but it was work up front. You needed to go, if you had a piece of steak, how much protein and how much fat is in there? You had a ballpark. You had to have some knowledge there instead of just, it was not intuitive. And wasn't that sort of hard to take? It's like, this is so tedious. I got to go log my food now. I got to do a finger prick now. And then that was busyness.
Like anything, it's tedious only because it's new and different. But once you get used to it and once you see the benefits outweigh the cost, the problem, then you do it, and then of course I try to enroll others around me, when I'm with family and I'm taking my blood, I'm like, let me take yours. Let's see how you are. And
good idea.
So I try to raise awareness and always have my ketonometer near me so that I can measure other people and they can be surprised too, and hopefully raise awareness there. But
I think that's great. How did that go? How did your family members go when you said, hey, come over here, let me see what your numbers are? And what were some of the numbers and what was the reaction to that?
Well, some were okay, which, that's great that you're okay, and some were not. And so, it's, again, just an awareness, and it's up to them to make a difference. It's always up to the person. But that can be eye-opening. But I think more eye-opening is losing weight. No matter what, people are attracted to seeing you lose weight and be skinny. And they're like, how do you do it? And so I think that, from the outside looking in, it's easier and better to, walk the talk and be skinny and be in your numbers. And then, of course, when you eat out, they see the things that you choose. And like I say, how hard is it to eat bacon and eggs in the morning, people? It's not that hard. Prime rib, it's not ribeye, it's not that hard. So it's hard, it's difficult only at the beginning, but not if you continue to think that.
Okay, so culturally, because I think even in the course of the 8 weeks, I think you went to Mexico. You had a weekend.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. And so culturally, Hispanics, Latinos, it's a high carb cultural diet.
It is. Rice and beans and tortillas are staples. They're staples, and even Tex-Mex, which I'm more now, is, chips and enchiladas and tacos. So yeah, it is. But, you just, again, I tortillas I gave up on. If they're not my grandmother's homemade tortillas, which she's resting in heaven now, then I'm not going to worry about it, because I don't have anybody else's tortillas that I love so much that I would be willing to give up my health. And it is more of a mindset. Again, when I even tell people I don't have fruit. What? No, I don't need fruit. It's carbs, and whatever is in the fruits is found in others, and they don't bring along the sugar and the carbs. So I don't have fruit as a rule. I don't have fruit, and even veggies. Veggies I only have as carriers of the oil. So I'll have, that's how I think of veggies, is they're carriers of my oil, because I can't have the oil on its own. So I'll have it with broccoli and cabbage and spinach, but I don't have veggies either. And that's okay. I mean, my macros are still fine. My vitamins are fine. I'm doing fine. Excellent.
A lot of people fold under the peer pressure, I'll call it, of their family, of their inner circle. And it looks like, I always knew you were a very strong person. You have to be, given the work that you're doing. And so you stood up to it, as much as everybody's having food around you. You said, no, I'm not doing that anymore. That takes a lot of, intestinal fortitude, as they say, to say, good for you, and not to be entangled in that and saying, this is what I'm doing, this is why I'm doing it. And just moving forward. Have people sort of said, oh, you can have one piece of cake, can't you, Irma? You can have one taco, can't you? Even though it's not your grandmother's.
Yeah, of course. They're like, what's wine? And I'm like, no, because I know I won't stop. If I have that margarita, I won't stop because I love it. Right. I'll just have my tequila shot, which, is enough. I just have the tequila. I don't need all that other sugar stuff. And so, yes, of course, that's true in life. Everyone's, they don't mean to. They just don't. They don't want to be left out, they don't want to be left out, and so they don't want to feel bad. I understand. I'm not here to make you feel bad if I choose the right foods for me. And another thing that's helped me, Dr. Carl, is just accepting the fact that I'm a diabetic. I'm like an alcoholic. I can't get near, I'm not an alcoholic, but it's similar to being an alcoholic, that as a diabetic, my body will always react to carbs and sugar differently than other people. So that's my cross to bear. That's my burden, and it may not be other people's, but that's mine, and I have to own it, and it won't go away. It always only be controlled, and again, it's similar to being an alcoholic. I had alcoholic friends, which I would leave the house and I'd come back and the alcohol would all be gone. And I'm like, seriously, you cannot control, like, alcoholic cannot control being near alcohol. Right. I cannot, be near carbs or sugar, because my body, I'm not going to hide it from anybody. My body would tell me I will be uneasy. I won't feel good.
Right. So that's all very impressive. That's exactly right. And it looks like you've learned a lot. I wish, and I think everybody else learned as much, but you really took this seriously, and in the group you were the one that had the most numbers I was concerned about. I'm so glad you addressed them. Let me ask, do you have any idea what your numbers are currently? And I don't expect you to spit them out, but ballpark, you must have some sort of.
Right. Well, when I'm curious enough to, like, I wonder if this had an effect. I'm like, I really do hover around 100 now in the glucose. I'll do the 120 in the mornings, or right after a big meal or after exercise. But 100 is my new normal, let's say.
Okay.
Which is still, again, pre-diabetic, but it's in control. And then I just had the A1C, and I believe it was 5.9 or 5.7.
Okay.
And I'm about to go get my electrolytes panel tested too. I found online, Dr. Carl, that you can get those tests done, just those tests for like $5-10, believe it or not. And so I don't go through medical. I just go and pay. There's I think it's called Ultra Lab, where I just pay $5 or $10 to just have that one test done, and I don't get involved with everything else, which I
That's
know
excellent.
is self-care, but
I'm all for that. Forward me that link. I think that's because that is the obstacle in telling people these are the things you need. And then the obvious question would be to people who don't take care of themselves. All right, so where do I go for this? And they go, I don't have to go to a doctor's appointment and get all this. And so they defer getting the numbers other than from your finger prick. So forward me that link when you can afterwards, because I think that's a real door opener. We'll assume the quality is equal to all the others, but to put that down, that's a big one.
It is. It's, it's Quest Diagnostics. I mean, they send you, it's a business, where the doctor orders the labs and you go and you get it done. And of course, nobody interprets it for you. You've got to interpret it, but with, the internet and just resources everywhere.
Absolutely.
You can do a good job without replacing a doctor, of course. But
well, good. Then speaking of tests like that, so what tests have you done? You've done your CBC, I assume? You did obviously your blood sugar, then you did your hemoglobin 1AC. Anything else you did?
No, again, just the glucose. I'm curious to do the insulin one because, as you mentioned to us, insulin is different than glucose. I haven't done it, but that would be my next one, is an insulin one.
That's right. So we did. That's a really good point. So I think everybody, when they get their glucose done by not a finger prick, obviously when they go to a lab to get that done, they should always do the glucose and the insulin together, because if we all sat in a room of people with, let's say, 100 blood sugar, so we had 10 people, they all had the same blood sugar, well, how much insulin did one person have to secrete to get it down to 100? And obviously want as little insulin as possible. So if we see a high insulin number, what we're seeing is an insulin resistance that can be changed. And if somebody had hardly any insulin, well, that's perfect, and then they're working their way to getting a lower glucose. But that's a really important point. And so, I mean, the bigger story is about insulin, and one can go beyond that. But if one gets in a habit of almost saying my insulin numbers are, that's remarkable. I mean, that's a deep level of learning. And with both glucose and insulin, doing before and afters, doing 1 month versus the next month, it's a real sense of healing for your whole body. It's a very important thing to do. That's great. I'm glad you're doing that. Glad you're looking into that. And it's an important point. So right now you sort of feel you're kind of, you got the big picture. You now are just plugging away. Do you have a goal? Do you say, I want to get my blood sugar down to X? I want to, and by the way, how much weight have you lost? You mentioned weight.
Right. I've lost 30 pounds since the beginning of the year. So yeah, that would be my next goal, is to lose more weight, because I'm still probably borderline obese, I'm 5'6" and I weigh 170. So that's still not within the slim range. But again, I've cut out dairy pretty much, except heavy cream on my coffee. I think that, and butter. I do have butter with my steak to get in the oils and the fats. But cheese, cheese is tempting because it's acceptable, but it's I just don't. I hate to contribute to the fact of how much cheese is consumed in America. Most people eat cheese. And like you said, the most dangerous thing is to have the high fat, high carb. And so they'll eat cheese with the carb, and then that makes it worse. But cheese is okay as part of a keto diet, but don't add the carbs, because then that, erases all the benefits. So it's just too easy. And then cheese is, they mix it many times. It's not real cheese. That nacho cheese is all processed. Soybean oil or whatever. Cheese is too easily disguised as something else. Again, when I tell people, did you know that your shredded cheese has potato in it? It has. That's what they have to put in to keep it separated, and they put potato in your cheese. Do you know that? And they don't know that. So I think cheese is like a dangerous at the beginning being in keto because it's too many additives and it's probably not pure like you need it to be.
Do you think you could ever go, let's say, a month and a half, 2 months without dairy? And say butter would be the only exception?
I mean, I could. Again, the one that would be hardest for me would be the heavy cream with my coffee. But,
Right.
you know, that would be the hardest thing. But, you know, again, it's in steps. So talking about steps, when I just did the 5-day fast, it wasn't hard at all. Like, it was so much easier than I even thought. It was so easy and eye-opening for me because I had already been doing keto. You know, I think that if for someone to go from 0 to 5-day fast or even a 2-day fast, you know, I mentioned it and they're like, oh no, I get headaches. Oh no, I couldn't do it, you know, which a lot of it is a mental thing because we're addicted to food and we don't know it. But I think the steps, you know, so like 5-day fast was really quite easy. And I will adopt even some of those fasting, you know, what I did to withhold the fast of eating bone broth. I never knew bone broth was so tasty. Like that, you can have that and not be on a fast and you're okay.
Right. Right.
So,
absolutely. Did you buy or did you make your bone broth?
No, I made my own. Yeah, I would make my own because I like to see. So this is I'm creative in the kitchen. I'm one of those, not a recipe person. So I added whatever spices I thought were interesting to give it flavor to my bone broth.
So is that beef bone broth?
Beef bone broth. And then I did the chicken leg one, which was fun. Just don't look at it.
Yeah, it's true. It's funny. Well, once you get into the whole bone broth thing, is that we say, you know, the turkey carcasses, and now all the bones we eat, when you have chicken, put it in a little bag, put it in the freezer, and at the end of 3 months, you got enough to make some bone broth. But as a little bit of a tangent, chicken feet, for the idea of the broths that they make, is such a huge market in China that it is actually a stock traded, in essence. They have a whole board.
Oh,
it's a commodity. I mean, that's how important it is to that culture, but it's the feet are very rich in collagen versus everything else. But, you know, FYI, and so when we make it, we make what's ever available. You know, if it's bones, we do bones. And it's certainly a great way, you know, which go back 500 years, this is what people did. They kept their bones. They didn't just throw it away. They then boiled them down and they had a whole nother product. It's like, that's amazing. Absolutely. It can go on. It's the whole collagen. It'll help arthritis, help a lot of things. That is cool. Wow. Yeah. So you encourage other people by saying, hey, what are your numbers are? You've had your own experience. You made it pretty simple for yourself. And you get the big picture, which is actually the most important thing. And you got out all the commercial products, which is a big deal because of all the additives. That's huge. So I'm being sort of the devil's advocate. I'm going to say, well, doesn't this take a lot of time? It sounds like you really had to learn about what foods not to have. And it sounds like you have to make all those foods at home. And I don't know, other than the bacon and eggs, sounds like you're doing a lot of cooking and preparing. Is that the case?
Well, no, it's not a lot of work. That's the question. I'm sorry, right? You want to see how it's a lot of work. No, I mean, I guess, again, I keep it simple, 0 carbs. You shoot for 0 carbs because there's so many hidden carbs that you're going to get 15, 20 in there. So just shoot for 0 carbs. And, you know, I'll be happy to share menus with people, but it's so simple. I mean, there are, again, I would recommend like a starter kit. What is a starter kit? The starter kit is, you know, measuring your ketones and your glucose. So getting the one that measures both, I think, is good. Getting, you know, your MC8 oil. Getting the collagen, the collagen, and then getting, you know, those are the 3, and the coconut oil. That's you know, Costco is the cheapest, but that's where I get it. So I just get your ingredients, and then of course the mayo, the homemade mayonnaise, so that you can dip in anything you want. It's so tasty, that mayonnaise. And that same thing, I add flavorings to the mayonnaise, garlic or whatever. I add different. I make it tasty, my mayonnaise. And so if you do like a little starter kit and just say, give up, I guess I would say for 7 days, give me 7 days of doing what I tell you to do, doing doing what you don't want to do for 7 days. How hard is it to give up 7 days of giving up your idea of food, your idea of health, your idea of that fruits and vegetables are good for you, your idea of that hasn't worked in the past, by the way, your ideas, because, there's a reason why you want to change. So, giving up your ideas and letting go of what you know and think and allowing, new information, because I think this is all new and it's still novel. And so I think if you let go of that for 1 week and measure your food and measure do what is said, then, and let the results show, then that will convince you. But you gotta give up a lot. I mean, you do have to give up. I think it's more of a mental thing. Again, giving up, that fruits and veggies are good for you. And how can a salad be bad for you? How can a salad be bad for you? Well, I can tell you many ways, but a salad isn't necessarily the best thing in the world. Or canned tuna, it's more a wall of belief and thoughts, which is for years. Yes, you've had it for years, all your life, but things are changed all your life. We went from a phone on the wall to a phone in every pocket. So things change, and you just have to understand that, technologies change and things change. And so now we have these new tools to give us better health.
Absolutely. No, it's and being in medicine, when these tools weren't around, how difficult it was to have a conversation like this, just on changing people's diets. Once you have the tools that we're using now, they can go and get their own data, and it's so exciting for them. So that's a big deal. So what are your glucose number goals? Are you going to be staying at 100 for like the rest of your life, or do you go,
well, I mean, it's my body. Again, I did go down to 88 when I was fasting, but again, that's not sustainable. I can't fast my life, but I can certainly adopt a more bone broth diet, for example. I don't know, whatever my body says. I zero carb, get rid of this, try this and that, but I guess as long as I know that I'm doing my best, I don't get stuck on numbers. More on my 1AC that hopefully being a three month average, that should continue to go down on its own. Like that, I guess I don't get caught up on the numbers, because it's so much that can affect it. Stress. Stress will affect it, and so I'm learning to identify that stress or the stressors and get rid of those stressors, because that can severely affect it. So I don't have goals. It's my body is my body. I'm a pre-diabetic. I am diabetic, and so I'll just need to control that, such that I don't have sugar episodes where damage is done to my nerves, because that's what I've read. Again, it's just an obsession with understanding. One bout. I mean, Quincy Jones. Oh my God, Quincy Jones went into the hospital. He had 2,000 glucose. Well, of course he was in the hospital. I can't imagine even getting near 2,000 glucose. I mean, it was super high. So just becoming aware of bouts like that's hopefully never going to happen to me. I know it won't if it's in my control, but my body's my body, and it'll give me the numbers it gives me.
So along with that idea, and that's where I like people to end up, that they're not tethered to numbers, but they understand numbers and have to go back and check in on themselves. That's great. Where are you on protein? Because that was one of the macros we had to measure. Some people in the sort of the evolution of this whole diet, people thought, all right, no carbs. I understand that, Irma, but where's protein? Does that mean I'm just eating as much protein as I want?
Well, no, because again, I learned that protein turns into sugar if you go above. So you've got to, also stay within limits of protein. I'd have to look in my macros again. But, I just stay within a reasonable amount. The size of my palm, is the amount of protein that I try to have, because I've got to leave space for the fat, and calorie-wise, I have to stay in control. So My protein, I also, you have to control that. You can't go crazy. This is not an Atkins diet. And so I get that question a lot, difference between keto and Atkins. And I'm like, well, I haven't researched it, but from what I understand, Atkins is like protein, and protein will turn into sugar if consumed in excess. So I do more of the ratio is 75%, well, more like 70% fat and then 30% protein and 0 carbs. Because again, there's so many hidden carbs. You will end up with like 10% carbs because you do. It's just hard not to. But that's the ratio that I try to stick to. With every bite of steak, I have a slice of butter, for example. With every bite, that's how you ensure that you get the right amount of fat with the steak. Of course, if you have the ribeye, that there's more in that. But I don't have ribeye every day. I have more like sirloin or whatever. So I'll have it with a bite of butter every bite, and then I know I'm okay.
Nice. Great answer. So you mentioned stress, and I remember it came up in you sort of tackling your situation. How do you under stress now? How do you understand stress now? Because before it's this, I have to work hard, I have to do it.
No.
And I didn't think that you connected it with your blood sugar levels until.
Well, I identified it. First, I looked at the contributors, like what are the things that contribute to a certain state of mind, right? Which is like not a happy one. So driving, commuting, like I was commuting to work an hour each way in LA traffic. And then once I would get to work, I would still have to drive around to source my product from my store. So I was driving 3 hours a day. In LA, that's not fun. No matter, and it was, many times out of integrity because I would use the carpool lane, which, anyway, right. But point is I was not in integrity driving and cutting people off. But, I had to do what I had to do in my mind. And so anyway, I cut the commute. I eliminated the commute. I moved my office closer to my home. I'm like 5 minutes from my home.
Wow.
And yes, I work out of a storage unit, but it works for me. And I don't have that stress of driving in LA traffic 3 hours a day. So that's gone down. And then, just learn. And as far as being present, when my son, 9-year-old, stresses me out like many 9-year-olds would, I just repeat what he says and I have him get that I understand him. And then I get his attention by repeating what he says. And then I tone down, our conversations of mother-child, brush your teeth type thing.
Did you, let me push this a little farther. Did you see a change in your blood sugar readings when you kind of made your life less stressful?
Well, yes, definitely. Definitely. And then of course contributing to the food, because of course those 3 hours of driving is less time for me to cook, less time for me to get a massage. I try to go on a weekly basis to get massages because I go to flea markets here in LA. They have excellent masseuses, believe it or not. They have put their little tent out there and there's like 6 or 7, usually Asian Americans, and I ask for the deep tissue, and I get 30 minutes for $15.
Wow.
How can you beat that? You cannot beat that. And it avoids I just show up with clothes, I don't go into a room, and which sometimes is fun, but it's just an easy way for me to go and get my massage.
Yeah.
And it works the muscles, which is what I want. If I wanted a mental massage, a massage that also is going to relax my mind, well, yeah, I'll go to a spa for that. But many times, if I'm just physically feeling, I'll go get my massage and then drink a lot of water, and wow, my sugar goes down, my glucose readings go down, and I feel better. And it didn't cost me, but $15 for 30 minutes to get that deep tissue massage. So
nice. Wow, you really took that seriously. You look a lot better, by the way. You look very healthy, whether it's the collagen, the keto, or whatever, but you look kind of beaming in a way. What other aspects of your change have you noticed? Did you notice any sort of mental clarity? How did your sleep go? What about, you're never depressed, but what about the idea of being upbeat or not, or things that bothered you and don't now? Or you mentioned dealing with your son. That's very clever in terms of repeating what he said. But on this other aspect, more subtle, more subjective things that we hear a lot about, but you can't really measure it, did any of these things change for you? Like, gosh, I'm just feeling a lot better. I'm sleeping better. I feel I do have a lot of mental clarity. It's a vague reference.
Well, definitely in terms of like being hopeful, I guess really my level of hope has really risen. The negative aspect, the life aspects, they're not negative. This part of life. Getting divorced is part of life. If you get married, you got to be ready for that possibility. Always. In driving, you've got to be ready for an accident, which driving 3 hours a day, I'm much more prone to an accident than not driving 10 minutes a day. So, those are just, I'm more hopeful of my future and feel more in control and more aware, that my health, now that I know I have the tools to live a long, healthy life, because if I'm going to live a long life, I want it to be healthy. I don't want it to be unhealthy. So now that I have the tools to do that, well, then I've got to get all the other aspects of my life in order so that I can enjoy I don't know, retirement. I don't like the word retirement. I don't think I'll ever retire, but, slow and travel more, be with my son more, do other things that are important to me. And so getting control of my health and my body has allowed me to be hopeful about the future and know that I can take care of myself in the future, with or without a husband, with or without a partner, and even with or without a business. Like I said, I'm not afraid of poverty. I'll be ready for that kind of like hope. I am just more hopeful. And yes, I guess mental clarity comes with that because, you're just like, I'm living in the future. I'm getting ready to travel with my son around the world in a year. His 5th grade is going to be online or unschool. I haven't decided. Online schooling, as long as there's internet, wherever I go, I will be there, living a month at a time in a different country with my son.
Excellent.
So that, that kind of project is possible if I know that I can handle the rigors of a year traveling with a 10-year-old. It's,
Wow.
That's not going to be easy, but that's what my intentions are.
Wow, that's wonderful. That really is wonderful. I love it both as a goal and an experience. And as we mentioned in the Facebook group, you hope to end up in Colombia to retire?
Well, Colombia is, yes, after my son, who at 18, he already knows when he graduates from high school, he's going off to college and living in dorms because I'm going to Colombia and living in Colombia.
Wow, very, very exciting.
None of this live at home stuff, not for my 18-year-old.
I'm glad you got the boundaries there for sure. So speaking of your son, he watched his crazy mom go through this dietary change and he had to witness it, whether he liked it or not. How did that go, him watching you? And then has he picked up any of these dietary changes that you now have, established?
Absolutely. We have pizza and only eat the top part, because he goes to parties. We went to a party yesterday. We were sitting next to another child who he saw gorge himself on candy and cookies and cake. And he's like, Mom, look at him. And of course, he was a severely overweight child. Like, Mijo, we see that's why he's that way, because he's there. And his mom was right next to him. And I just couldn't believe it. But my son, yes, as a 9-year-old, he knows what's keto, what's not. He knows to avoid, what foods to avoid. His dad takes him lunch to school every day. And so I've had to enroll his dad also in following, as much as we can, keto diets. It's not easy with a child because, he does like his hot dogs. But in the morning I cut up hot dogs and eggs, and that's our breakfast, and he loves that. And I just overload it with olive oil, just enough. He watches cooking shows, so he knows he knows a lot about food. He's like, Mom, make sure you don't put any coconut oil in there. I could taste it. I know. Olive oil for him. But yes, it starts young, and I will let him have chips. He loves his chips once a week. I can't deny it because then it becomes more tempting, but I'll let him have it once a week. He'll have, a bag of chips. And it's just part of our everyday life here. This is the way that it is. Mommy has diabetes. I don't want you to get it. And this is how we start early. And it's not good. There's no pasta in the house. There's no bread. The pancakes we've adopted to almond flour and a lot of butter and so forth. So we just make adoptions and they're okay.
Have you tried the homemade keto pancakes that Judi had put in the Facebook group?
Not yet.
Okay, we'll repost it. It's pretty interesting. I'm not trying to ketoize everything, but I didn't think it was possible to be dairy-free and flour-free and yet have a pancake. So it's possible. That's interesting. So you guys sat and you watched the Magic Pill together. That was a while back. And how did he take this other than watching another movie? Did he sort of see, oh my gosh, this is a big deal. My mother's like a pioneer here.
Well, yeah, again, he just saw other children and see their transformation from not touching food to, crying and putting a fit. And sometimes, I do that with him. I'm like, well, I'm not going to serve you that. Hunger will tell you when it's time to eat, and hunger will tell you that this is the food that you will eat. This is all that we have in the kitchen, so deal with it. And so I use that language with him because it's his body. He's got to learn. Many times he's not with me, so he's got to learn to make those choices.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so the Magic Pill was, eye-opening to see other kids go through that, definitely.
Mm-hmm. So do you feel, in your opinion now, about your cultural orientation, my take on this side, when people are Latina, or even Hispanics in general, have a predisposition to higher blood sugar. Maybe it's because it's many generations of having a high-carb diet, but you look around to any of your friends that are also Hispanic, and do they have issues? Do you call that out? Does that even ring a bell with you? Like, I do feel that Irma, have a greater sensitivity, so I have to be sharper on watching what I eat. This is what I've seen in terms of patients coming through, that there was sort of, you had to be more tight with some culturally and looser with others. Just kind of that's what they got. Have you in any way made that connection, or like in what way?
I mean, yeah, culturally there is, a more relaxed attitude in general. Not to stereotypes, but definitely, 4:00 party doesn't start till 5 or 6. So it's part of it is true. Again, and there's exceptions. No, we don't want to stereotype, but there is a relaxed attitude. I mean, diabetes, the numbers say, in Hispanics is much more prevalent. It's not a joke. And maybe, yes, then if you attribute it to like, hey, it's not your fault. It's, all our ancestors, that had this food, and now, we realize why, death rates are such they are and so forth. So I think that if you depersonalize it, then maybe it's more acceptable. At least that's for me too. It's not me, it's my environment, but which is okay as a child, but as an adult, you have to take responsibility. It's no longer okay because now once there's no excuse. You're not ignorant, and it's now choices that you're making.
Right.
So I have an uncle that got polio at 4 or 5 years old, and he's, diabetic. He has his insulin shots, and so there's definitely evidence of that in the family, and people can see. And he's one of our pillars. He's the hardest working man I know. He has several businesses. He's an impressive man. And him and his wife are both polio from age 4, and they've had kids and grandkids. But my point is that, even him, like, again, you see him, shoot his insulin before eating, and yet he eats, the regular food, which I guess that's what doctors tell him. It's like, well, as long as you shoot your insulin, then you can eat whatever you want. And I've asked him, please ask your doctors, tell them, if there's a way that nutrition can help you, so we can, because of course he's in a wheelchair, he's sedentary, so he cannot exercise, so he's got that much, has to control himself that much more on food.
Yep.
Because he doesn't have the activity level that he needs, that his body needs. And my aunt is she's got gangrene, she's got or gangrene, but one leg is traveling, and she's just the idea of having a foot cut off, a leg cut off. She prefers to die than have a leg cut off, and unfortunately that's what may happen. But food, again, this is where food is like, food can cure you, food can heal you. But part of it, being just owning I'm Hispanic, and that's, if my ancestors ate that way, then they had no choice. That was the food that was given to them, that they raised, their farms. But now we do have a choice, people. We have a choice, and if you're gonna live, might as well live. And just the unknown of cancer, Dr. Carl. Cancer alone, the scare of cancer, and not knowing what causes cancer, or there's hints here and there, but so then why wouldn't we go back to where cancer didn't exist? Let's go back to the times when cancer wasn't prevalent, and just eat like they did. You see pictures of people in the 50s and the 60s, they're all skinny, they're not that,
Yeah,
So,
no, that's a good point. So a relative like your uncle and your aunt that you just described, have you ever approached them and said, hey, let me do a finger prick with you? Or is it just too big a bridge to cross with a family member?
Yeah, I think it's too big, because they've got so many issues because of their polio, which I understand you never get cured. I mean, he has some latent experiences to go through.
Right.
Apparently. And so, no, I love him the way he is, and he's getting a lot of medical care, and he chooses to do what he wants to, I don't, but yeah, there are other people that I think, I could intervene, do an intervention, and hopefully make a difference. But of course, it doesn't help that I live in LA and most of my family lives in San Antonio. So that doesn't help. But yeah, it's going to a party last night and saying, wow, this is the only thing that I can eat, and they contribute. All this food is not making us healthy.
So you mentioned alcohol. So what do you think when it comes to alcohol? I mean, it's, apart from the idea all alcohol is calories, do you go through a little filter there as well and saying, well, if I'm going to have alcohol, I will have...
Well, I've never read so many beer labels before in my life. Who reads labels on beer? Well, I do, because there is a wide variety of carb count even on light beer. So
I agree.
You just have to read labels. And, it's just a refresh. Why do I like beer? Well, I like that refreshing flavor, that effervescent. Well, then I guess I'll have, my tequila with seltzer water or something like that.
Do you orient, when you do have alcohol, do you choose the spirits, we'll call them, as opposed to the beer, as opposed to the wine? Or when in Rome, do what Rome does? Anyways,
Yeah, I do. I am a victim of when in Rome, do in Rome. If everybody's having beer, then I'll just get the light beer and look for the lowest carb, or wine with meal. I do enjoy my wine with meal. Or if I'm out and about, in the spirits, tequila shot draws attention. Yep. And that's fine with me.
Yeah, it's interesting. In your neck of the woods, LA, it's a big neck of the woods. There is a company out towards where the vineyards are, I can't even think of it, Sonoma. And what he did, he's a big wine connoisseur, and he got into keto, and he goes, well, this sucks that I can't have my wine anymore. It has too much sugar. So he went through all the wines, kind of like what you're talking about, the beer, and first came up with low sugar, low carb wines. And he went even further. He now sources the world for its completely fermented wines. And his whole premise of his practice, if you would call it his business, is that he sells wines that have no sugar, all to the keto market. It's kind of amazing. So that's typical California leading the way in innovation. But so that's an adaptation. Yeah, no, it's a filter. I mean, I think of that too. I like wine and I go, and then I have to think about just calories in general, but it's a choice and there is a variation, beer is the worst and then you find out what you got to do and then wine and then there's better wines than others and obviously spirits as well. Well, I would challenge you if there is you're such a perfect student. You're driven. I mean, you take information, you have a deal with yourself that once known, you can't forget about it. I think that's a line to steal. That's such a good lesson. But my challenge to you would be let's take 7 days, right? Since you're talking about 7 days, let's take 7 days and do absolutely no dairy. And since it's 7 days, I would say, don't do butter either. Be absolutely cow-free, even though it's a problem. But for 7 days, why? And intermittently take some of your numbers, like your glucose numbers. And here's what I would expect to see. And you're doing famously anyway without this challenge. But it's obviously an option. I think your glucose would go down. And I think you would experience, hard to say in the course of 7 days, always. With patients, I would say they would have to do it for 6 weeks, ideally 2 months. But 7 days, if you're 100% off, you should have a subjective feeling of call it lightness, clarity, all the things that keto gives you, but it's even another level of that. You'll probably start some weight loss. If you lose 10 pounds in a week, that would be famously high, not unreasonable, but at least, and I don't care what you do after that, because then you would have had the experience. And then you would say, look what happened when I didn't do dairy. And just like what you're talking about now with keto, you're bringing in certain things that you have a general awareness, you know how to get real tight on it if you want to get real tight on it, but just try the dairy free. The number of times, and it's hard to layer that in because heck, I just walked away from mozzarella pizza. My wife, it's like we had dairy maybe once every 6 weeks as an exception because of the insulin, the effect on the insulin, less on the glucose. And that was the thing about dairy, because as there's other factors in. But if you took 7 days and say, hey, just what I like your deal, I'll take the deal too, so to say. But and if you do that, I would love to hear how what would happen on the other side: weight, glucose, ketones. It doesn't have to be every day, but you know what I'm talking about. But that would be something.
It's on. That's a reasonable challenge, actually, not too hard to do. I just ran out of heavy cream, so I'm not gonna buy it. And
Okay.
yeah, I can do it, no problem.
All right, put it on your calendar. All right, I'm not going to tie you up anymore. I so appreciate your time. I feel very lucky that I got to watch you sort of turn a corner and saying, this is something I can handle, and you stepped up to the challenge. A lot of people step down from the challenge when they're busy, and that's their excuse. You brought this into a very busy life full of a lot of responsibilities, and I'm very impressed with what you've done with your son.
Well, thank you very much. And yeah, we're thinking about what's going to be our goal around the world, obviously then his education, but either he's going to do cooking with kids around the world because he loves kids, or even I can do keto around the world. Like that would be an angle because I want to have a YouTube following and keep everybody, but I would love to do keto around the world. Because again, this whole cultural thing, you think that you're going keto, that you're stripping away your identity, you're stripping away fun. No, it's just different. It's just different. It's not worse. It's different and maybe better, but I think once you take away the emotional attachment of food and just see it for what it is a way to nourish us and keep us healthy so that we can enjoy the other parts of life, then I want to do that around the world.
Absolutely.
Keto around the world. Doesn't that sound like fun?
Oh, it seems if you could tie that in with your blog and your YouTube channels, you can have your son be the videographer or vice versa. So you film.
Yeah, we should start practicing learning that. Yeah, that's
right.
Didn't think about that, but yeah. So we're hoping to make a big deal about this trip around the world. A mom and her son.
I think that would be a famous trip around the world. That is wonderful. Wow. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm gonna let you get off. So thanks again. I'm so proud of you, Irma. Take care.
Thank you. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening. For anybody who has any questions, feel free to contact me on our Facebook group, Keto Naturopath. Same name as our podcast. I'm open to any questions, and we plod through the good and the bad, the difficult and the easy, week after week.